Okay, so before we talk about Route 53, we have to talk about what is a DNS. So this is a basic level lecture, but at least it will help you understand how DNS works. And this is something you've been using behind the scenes every day, but you don't know about it exactly. So let's have a look. So a DNS is a domain name system. And what it will do is that it will translate human-friendly host names into the target server IP addresses. For example, when you type in your web browser www.google.com, it will, in the end, give you back an IP address. And this is this IP address that your web browser will be able to access behind the scenes and get some data back from Google. So the DNS is the backbone of the internet. It is a way for you to understand how to translate these URLs, these host names, into IPs. So there is a hierarchical naming structure for DNS. And the idea is that at the root of www.google.com, for example, there is the .com. But then there is example.com, which is a bit more precise, then www.example.com or api.example.com. So all of these are going to be the hierarchy of your domain names. Next, we need to define a little bit of terminology regarding your DNS. So there is a domain registrar. This is where you're going to register your domain names, and it could be Amazon Route 53, or it could be GoDaddy, or any other domain registrar you can find online. Then you have DNS records, and they have different types, and we'll have a look at them in details in this section. So it could be A, quadruple A, CNAME, NS, etc., etc. Don't worry, we'll see those in details in this section. A zone file which contains all the DNS records. So this is how to match these host names to IPs or addresses. Name servers is servers that will actually resolve the DNS queries, and we'll have a look at them as well in the section. Top level domains, which is .com, .us, .in, .gov, .org, etc., etc. Second level domain, which is Amazon.com and Google.com. So you can see there are two words in between a dot. And so if we take a look, for example, at this FQDN, so fully qualified domain name, we have http://api.www.example.com. Okay, so the last dot at the end is called the root, and it's the root of all the domain names. Then the .com, so .com is your TLD, so that's your top level domain. The example.com is going to be your second level domain. Then we have www.example.com, that's your subdomain. api.www.example.com is your FQDN, your fully qualified domain name. HTTP is going to be your protocol, and all these things together is going to be your URL. So now that we know a little bit of terminology, let's have a look at how DNS works. So we have a web server, and let's say, for example, that we have an IP. It's a public IP. It could be an EC2 instance, for example. And the public IP is 9.10.11.12. And we want to be able to access this using the example.com domain name. So we're going to register this example.com domain name on one of our servers for the DNS. But let's see how the computer, your web browser, can access it and can get that response. So your web browser is going to want to access example.com. And to do so, it's going to ask its local DNS server, hey, do you know what example.com is? Now, this local DNS server is usually assigned and managed by your company or assigned by your internet service provider dynamically. And if the local DNS server has never seen this query before, what it's going to do is first ask the root DNS server managed by the ICANN, the ICANN organization. And it's going to say, hey, do you know what's example.com? Which is the first server that's going to be asked. And the root DNS server is going to say, I've never seen it, but I know .com. So .com is NS, so it's an NS record name server, and go see 1234, this public IP. So this is saying to local DNS, hey, I don't have this answer, but I'm getting you a little bit closer to your answer because I know the .com domain, and the .com domain name server has this IP, 1234. So the local DNS server is saying, okay, good. Now I'm going to ask the top level domain, so the .com domain server at 1234, I'm going to ask for the answer of my query. So this is another domain managed by IANA, the IANA, and the example.com, okay, is going to be asked again to this DNS server. So do you know about example.com? And the DNS server is going to say, hey, I don't know about example. I do know about example.com. I don't have the answer to your query right away. I don't know which record it is, but there is a server called example.com that I know about, which is at 5.6.7.8. That's a public IP that you should ask the answer to your question. So the local DNS server is then going to go to our final server, which is the sub-level domain DNS server. And this is a server that is going to be managed by your domain registrar. So it could be, for example, Amazon Route 53 and so on. So the DNS server is going to say, hey, do you know about example.com? And the DNS server will have an entry for example.com. And so it will say, hey, yes, of course I know example.com. And it turns out that example.com, I know that it's an A record and that the result of it is the IP 9.10.11.12. So the DNS server now knows the answer by recursively asking DNS servers and finding the most specific one. And then it says, okay, hey, yes, I'm going to cache that answer right away because I want to be able to, if someone is asking me again for example.com, I want to get right away give them the answer. So it's going to send back the answer into your web browser, and your web browser now has the answer. And using this IP address, then it's going to be able to access your web server. So this is how DNS works. So you've been using DNS behind the scenes all along, all your life. For example, when you access www.google.com, you're using DNS or any website. But now we see how the DNS queries work. So this is just some background knowledge because now we're going to go into Route 53 and learn how to manage a DNS server on our own. So I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.